Ron Howard and Brian Grazer are here. Since 1986, their production company, Imagine Entertainment, has produced films grossing more than count them, $3 billion. Parenthood, Ransom, Apollo 13, and Liar Liar, just to name a few. In addition to their film success, they've also turned to television. They have 3 critically acclaimed series: Felicity, Sports Night, and The PJs. Their latest film project is called Ed TV, directed by Ron Howard. It stars Matthew McConaughey and Jenna Elfman. I am pleased to show you now a trailer from that film.
How about sex?
I'm gonna have to pass. And it's not an age thing, because you are still a handsome man.
Ed TV.
You know what? This is going right up here.
Joining me now, the director of the film is Ron Howard. The man who runs the company is Brian Grazer. I'm pleased to have them here to talk about Ed TV and this whole huge business success that they have had. Let me go back to the beginning. I promise you we'll get to the movie. How did this thing happen between the two of you?
Well, it essentially happened, we did a movie, Night Shift. That started it off. It was an idea of mine. Ron was trying to an aspiring mainstream movie director, and I was trying to be a mainstream movie producer. And I had this idea about 2 guys running a call girl ring out of the New York City morgue, and surprisingly, he liked it.
Yeah.
And then that became a movie of some success, and then enough success that I got this mermaid movie made, which he directed, and that turned out really well.
That turned out to be Splash.
Turned out to be Splash.
Yeah. And that was your first. Was that the one that got you the most attention?
Yeah, well, Night Shift meant a lot,
right,
because even though it wasn't a huge hit, it was a success. And for me, I'd been directing Roger Corman movies,
right,
TV movies, and people were kind of intrigued, but I couldn't get a major studio deal. I couldn't get that. And Brian with Night Shift, you know, even though it was his first major film as well, really navigated those waters. And that meant a lot to us. Splash, however, was a complete surprise hit and a major hit in
everybody's
year.
terms. Yeah.
And I think for both of us that really solidified their careers. But it really also solidified the partnership, which we didn't formalize for another few years, a couple of years, but it was there. And even as we went off and started doing other projects separately, we found we were talking on the phone every day. We were developing a couple things together, but we had no real compelling business reason to be on the phone all the time. But we'd become great friends, and we loved working together.
Now, did you put this in concrete at any point, so that you knew how much you got and he knew how much he got, and you had one of these big deal official corporations?
There's a little bit to that. I mean, what we did is when we formed Imagine Films, we didn't know how it should break down, what the financial split should be, and the division of labor and all that. But then we just decided to be simple about it, and we just said we'd be 50-50 partners on everything. So all of his fees and profits, all of my fees and profits would go into a pot, and we pretty much I don't think we really added up, and we just split it.
You don't really know who's contributed the most over the years.
Right.
Right?
No, but it clearly comes out in the wash. I mean, I think we support each other, we work well together, the company's growing, and the whole idea always was, 1 and 1 had to add up to more than 2. Yeah. And I think that we've done that, and we're continuing to do it.
Well, then what is exactly that he does?
Well,
define it, Ron. In your own terms.
We know what you bring to the table.
Okay.
What is it he brings to the table?
Well, look, first of all, Brian has grown and evolved, as I hope I have, as an artist and a director and a businessman, but he has too. But from the beginning, he's a natural catalyst. Yeah. He's one of these guys that knows how to breathe life into a little spark, get it into a ball of flame, and start rolling it, and it just happens, And he's just really gifted with that, and he does it by understanding the system. He does it through will, self-confidence, good taste. And just energy, you know? It's remarkable. He's continued to evolve into this guy who has this deep grasp of the industry, popular culture, audiences, marketing, and it's it's incredible to see him sort of go from a marketing meeting or a story conference and into a very sophisticated business meeting and be comfortable in all those environments. And it's great to be in on it. Great to be his partner.
Here's the point I'm trying to make, though. I mean, you get a little bit in the creative side too. I mean, you take a creative interest in what these movies are going to end up being on the screen.
Absolutely.
You're not just a guy up making the deal saying, here's a good idea, go make it, Ron, and when you come back, I'll go market it.
No, that's right. I started as a writer. So I started as a writer really just out of survival because I was in...
You have to control something in this business to even get in the door.
Yeah, you got to say, I do this.
Right, yeah. Here's something I have. If you want it, you got to talk to me. I'm sorry.
That's right. I own this little story about a mermaid.
Right.
You know, you want this mermaid? I'm the producer. That's how it works.
It was more like it was back then.
I knew I'd learn something here tonight.
Yeah, that's
you
it.
got to have something that they want.
They have to have something they want. Now, you know, depending on how much passion you have, your level of articulation, how forceful you are, your level of energy, and how you sustain that energy, that's the thing that breathes the life or currency into a single sentence or an idea. So I have a lot of energy and passion. So I do start with an idea. Early on, most of those ideas were mine because I had more time and I had no money to buy books or scripts. So I would create these little ideas myself in the case of Night Shift and Splash and a few other things, and television ideas as well. Now our company has flourished, and I'm able to buy things. I'm able to find people like me and buy from them.
So you're going to find the younger
producers. Yeah, try to do that.
We've also got a great team at Imagine that's evolved and grown with us, and you know, they're terrific at finding projects and nurturing along relationships with writers.
All right, let me just take one project.
Okay.
Apollo 13.
Yes.
Where did it come from?
That came from, it was a 10-page outline that was going to become a book about written by Jim Lovell, essentially. Right. And it was going to be about that space mission. And someone in our company, named Michael Bostic, spotted it, we read it, and loved it. But then there was a big bidding war, you know, where Ron and I, he was on the East Coast, it was 11 o'clock, the East Coast, it was 8 o'clock on the West Coast, and we had to convince the agent, hey, we really love it. We care about it. Brian and Ron care.
We made calls from 11 to 1 my time. You know, like every 15, 20 minutes there'd be another call.
So we locked it down that night.
So the idea was to communicate to these people that own this script
idea.
This treatment. 10-page treatment.
Yeah, this treatment.
That you guys
really
loved it more, cared more, would do better job because of those factors.
Exactly. Right. That's exactly right. It was to persuade them based on passion and commitment that it should go to us as opposed to the other potential buyers.
Did it work?
It worked.
I mean, obviously you got the project, but is that the reason you think you got it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. Because it was being handled on, that was it. It was based on passion.
It was being handled as an acquisition everywhere else, and for us, we were already handling it as a movie we just desperately wanted to make.
Then we were able to we worked on it pretty hard, diligently, and got a good script. And
it went through our development system remarkably smoothly and became a go movie, even though there was no real commercial precedent for it. You know, I mean, it didn't sort of jump up as a great investment, but Brian believed in it commercially and creatively. I was excited about it.
It was a great challenge for you.
Great challenge for me. And not just commercially, but emotionally, you believed in the rescue story.
Yeah. So I think Ron and Tom Hanks, their focus was, they had a lot of emphasis on the hardware and the journey. I was really interested in the human side. These three guys trapped up there, and how are they going to reach inside of themselves, summon up enough information and will to survive it? Yeah. So we both, Ron and Tom came from one place, I came from another place, and somehow it worked.
It did. Ransom. Where did the idea come from?
Ransom was a screenplay that existed, and Brian heard about it. It was at a different studio than the one we normally work at. It was at Disney, and Brian knew that I had been nursing along without really going into active development a story about kidnapping, and that I had a point of view about taking a look at something like that from sort of both sides of the drama, almost a journalistic look at it. Well, this script didn't present the story in that way, but Brian, he read it or heard about it and told me that he thought I should look at it because he thought I could apply sort of this take that I had on the subject to this story, which had a great hook, which was the father trying to turn the tables, which certainly didn't exist in my idea. And he also knew and was encouraging me to try to find something different, unusual, that people wouldn't expect me to do.
Maybe edgier, yeah.
And then once you decide you're going to go with that, the most important thing you can do now is get Mel Gibson.
Exactly.
You bet.
That becomes like, how do we get Mel? Well, yeah. And so I kind of knew Mel, and
I met with him a couple of times about things. He came on board fairly easily on that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
You didn't have to twist his arm or offer him twice more than he'd ever gotten before, any of that thing. You just...
No, we didn't have to do any of that.
You showed you cared.
You showed him we cared again. I think it comes down to that, however. It's all about love.
Second story lesson here tonight.
It's all
You got to bring
about
something
love.
to the table, and then you got to show them you
Artists need
care.
love.
Then you're going to win.
Exactly. That's true. If you can
All
do
right,
that.
EdTV, where'd that come from?
That came. An agent happened to mention to me that there was this French-Canadian movie called Louis the, what was it called?
Louis the 19th, King of the Airwaves.
King of the Airwaves.
It was a huge hit in Quebec. I'm not joking. I mean, it was like that's like the massive all-time movie in Quebec.
To us, it was the most obscure thing possible. So I said, well, what's it about? And so he gave me the one line on it, and I loved it. So I bought it without ever seeing the movie. It took about a year to get the rights.
Gave you the one line on it.
The one line.
What was it? Do you remember what the one line was?
Yeah, it's about a guy that willingly decides to trade his life, essentially, give up all of his freedoms, go on television, become essentially a network almost for fame.
Where cameras are physically following him 24 hours a day.
And then it becomes, what does fame give you? The goods and the bads of fame.
Right.
And I loved that idea.
And I remember you were excited about it. You called me, and I can't remember whether I was on the set of Apollo 13, just to give you an idea of the time frame of these things. But I was filming Apollo 13, and he knew I was looking for a comedy, and I'd been reading some things that I thought were funny, but I sort of couldn't connect with it emotionally. He ran it by me, and I immediately loved it. And if there's one rule at Imagine that we subscribe to, it's that when both of us get truly excited, we will support each other no matter what.
Right.
If Brian's passionate about something, I may not totally get it. I'll say I don't get it, but I'm right there.
Right.
Same thing. If I want to direct a movie or I want to produce a movie that I love, Brian will support it all the way. But when we both agree, well, that becomes like a number one priority. It just moves up the list, and that's the way we felt about EdTV from the beginning.
Right.
All right, take a look at this. We want to show you some clips from EdTV. This is the first. We'll explain what this movie. Set this up for me, Ron. You should set it up. This is when Ed, who is Matthew McConaughey, and his family are discussing if he should make this decision to be documented on TV.
Yeah, this concept has come to him. He's inadvertently kind of backed into getting the opportunity, and he's not sure whether he wants to do it. And the discussion is, well, what's this going to do to our lives? What will it be like?
Roll tape. Here it is.
I just thought we were married.
Marcia, calm down, honey.
Well, he's picking at me and he's bringing up all kinds of issues.
Listen, married is married.
You know what? Maybe this isn't a good idea.
Now, what's great about that is you get to introduce all these characters
Right.
in that clip.
Right.
Yes.
As we were watching this, you said, not knowing that I would bring it up again, what a great cast.
It is a great cast. It was really terrific. And it was another chance to sort of do a couple things. A romantic story. There's a good love story at the center of this, and also a family story while dealing with this contemporary kind of comedic concept. And like Parenthood, sort of got to work on that notion of, is there any such thing as a functional family? We hear a lot about dysfunctional families. Are there any that are functional? I mean, if you really take a good hard look. And I thought we could mine that for a lot of comedy in a kind of a relatable way.
And when was the first time you heard the words "The Truman Show"?
Oh, God.
Truman.
Well, I was able to see The Truman Show, actually see this. There was a tape floating around Hollywood. I was somehow able to see it about 5 months before we were even going to go start shooting this movie.
Did it scare the bejesus out of you or not?
It did. But then when I saw the movie, I was comfortable, and I said, let's make ours. Because even though I thought The Truman Show was brilliant. I mean, it was a mind blower to me. It was really a mind blower. It was it was surrealistic. It was amazing. But I knew what we were trying to do was a comedy. So it's a completely different genre, and the essential sort of what-if hook is entirely different. The departure point into our story is completely different than The Truman Show. But it still becomes a problem for us.
But I picked
It's
Brian.
still about having your life on TV.
Yeah, it's still about that.
The one-sentence description is very similar. Beyond that, there's really, they're barely related. But I started picking Brian's brain. I didn't want to see the movie. I didn't want to see the tape. I was already in love with this movie. And it's kind of hard to fall in love with directing a movie. It represents 18 months of your life. It's going to be an everyday thing, and you have to sort of want to get up every morning and deal with this story.
It's kind of hard to fall in love with wanting to direct a movie?
Well, I know I want to direct a movie, but which one? It's kind of hard to fall in love with a movie story.
Okay.
I had fallen in love with this script and this project, and I really wanted to do it. So I picked Brian's brain a little bit about the movie, just enough to sort of know that I felt that ours could stand on its own and was going to be quite unique in its own right, and really entertaining in a very different way. One, to me, was sort of a Twilight Zone, you know, which is a series that I loved, and I happen to love Truman Show too, but more a Twilight Zone, and ours was more, you know, a contemporary comedy, a kind of a populist comedy.
Did you think at all before you cast, because of Liar Liar, Jim Carrey?
Well, we didn't really, because the whole notion was to try to be as sort of truthful and honest with this movie as we could while being as funny as we could. So it was that kind of balance, similar to Parenthood. And there was a sort of a choice, a decision we had to make fairly early on. Do we want to make this a comic vehicle for, you know, a great comedian, or do we want to tell a story and kind of look at the whole picture? And I had decided that I wanted to take a sort of broader look at the subject. When I heard the idea, I thought, I'm looking for a comedy. I haven't made a comedy in a long time. I've learned an awful lot about camera techniques, different sort of cinematic styles through doing these suspense stories and these dramas. I wanted a movie that I thought could be visual, but funny in more than one way. And this, I thought, had a chance to be physical, had a chance to be smart, and it also had a chance to be sort of emotionally based in that sort of comedic, dramatic way.
I want to put you on the spot. Do you think don't you think, or do you think Jim Carrey should have been nominated for Best Actor this year?
I do.
I do.
You do.
I do.
You both
I do too.
Yeah.
I mean, it really was an omission, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Not to take anything away from the other guy,
No,
you
it's
know,
not.
but,
I mean,
I was shocked.
we're not taking anything from any one person. He should have been nominated.
But he should have been nominated.
Should have been nominated.
He did a really, really exceptional job, and especially given the body of work that's behind him. I mean, for the most part, he's done amazing comedy work. So then to sort of contain himself the way he did, to do that, is really a discipline that is beyond understanding.
Sure.
But let me just say one thing, that prior to seeing Truman Show and in having meetings with Jim, and of course, you know, Brian did Liar Liar with him, but it didn't surprise me in the least to see him be as effective as he was in Truman Show.
You had all that talent.
Oh, to be a dramatic actor, no problem. But I did think, as you mentioned him as related to Ed TV, that in a movie that was going to try to be funny, that it would be very disappointing in a way if he wasn't absolutely as fall-down hilarious as he possibly could be.
Right.
So.
In other words, it may be easier to make the transition for him to step up and be serious than it would for him to expect to be funnier than he normally is, or something like that.
Right.
Matthew McConaughey, why did you cast him? I'm not sure. You both discussed it. Why him?
Of course we talked about
Why
it.
not? I mean, why not him might be a better question, but how'd you end up with him?
Well, because since we decided we weren't going to go with a comedian, that we wanted somebody that had an earthy, quirky quality about them, that was entertaining, but doesn't do jokes. So what happened is I'd seen Dazed and Confused a long time ago, as did Ron, and we thought he was great in Dazed and Confused. Then he became a star, and then he went off and did real big things, that, you know, big roles in big movies.
Right.
I thought he was particularly well cast in this Dazed and Confused. So I had him in my office, and he, just like this desk here, I had a wooden desk. I went off and looked the other way for a minute, and he spilt a Coca-Cola on my desk. And he had his mouth on the desk, sucking up the Coca-Cola, thinking I wasn't going to see him. And then I looked at him, and he went like that to get the rest of it. And I thought, this guy is a funny character.
Yeah, he could do it.
I said, the guy in Dazed and Confused is much like the guy I'm sitting with right now, and that really conforms to the quirky, funny character that we want in our movie.
Then my teenage daughter was bugging the hell out of me.
She loved him.
He'd be great. and Matthew turned out to be very, very funny. He was a little bit concerned about the comedy. He was a little bit concerned reading the script, written by Gans and Mandel, who are you know, pure comedy writers, and their writing has, as Lowell puts it, Lowell Gans, almost an algebra to the comedy. There's a sort of a structure to the jokes that really has to be honored. Now, really talented people take that, bend it, and you don't notice the fact that there, in fact, is kind of music there, that there's a rhythm to getting that joke across. Well, Matthew was scared of that. And I started working with him, so did Gans and Mandel, and we started to tailor the movie for him, for his natural rhythms. But the real thing was when Woody Harrelson came into the movie, and we started rehearsing, and Woody knew how to honor those rhythms, how to nail the jokes as written, plus embellishing and creating himself, and still let it ring true, allow it to be dead honest. When Matthew actually saw in front of him that this could be done, it was almost like a weight lifted off his shoulders and a light went off, and he became just loose, funny, and he brought so much to this movie. I mean, he surprised even me, and I was all for casting him.
All right, roll tape. This is a scene where he sort of is in his daily routine with the cameras following him around everywhere he goes. Here it is.
They seem to celebrate the fact that the guy's a boob. Sort of a joyous celebration of boobery. That's what it is. Take it easy.
So, when you finished the movie,
right?
Did you test it?
Eventually, yeah.
I mean, what do you learn from that? And did you change anything from testing?
Absolutely.
You learn a lot and you change a
learn a lot and change a lot. We didn't have to change this movie structurally. Sometimes you sort of reinvent it. Editing is the final rewrite.
Right.
You know, it's all a creative process. But making the movie, shooting the movie, well, that's kind of gathering the raw materials. The film is really made in the editing room. And you think you know what you're communicating. You think you know what's effective. But the fact of the matter is, until you put it up in front of an audience, just as until a playwright takes the play out of town and puts it on its feet, you don't quite know what it's saying for sure. You can't be sure, and particularly with a comedy. So I find the screenings to be invaluable. And in this case, the movie was long, but from the beginning, you could see the audiences really liked it, and it was just a matter of getting it down to size.
You find at the moments they laugh the most, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
You find that, but it also reinforces your own instincts. It allows you to ignore certain anxieties you have, because keep in mind, as a storyteller, you're prejudiced. You think you know where the warts are. You think you know where the weak spots are, and sometimes you're surprised by what, in fact, is a highlight to a lot of people.
Have you gone into movies knowing that they had weak spots, knowing that if you'd had more time, and knowing that you were uncertain, knowing that big movies, I mean, like Apollo 13 or like...
Fears that there are weak spots. Anxiety.
It's not like you've pointed out something and I know this is weak and I just hope I survive without it being...
Absolutely. You say that, but that doesn't mean I'm right.
Yeah.
But I will say many times, I think this is a problem, I think that's a problem, I think this is a thing, how do I beat that? And a lot of the conversations that we have are sort of conceptual. How do you cope with the weaknesses?
Yeah. I mean, my goal as a producer is slightly different than Ron's. I mean, my goal is to get the most talented people to take a leap of faith and get on the project. Because so
and then start the problem solving.
Yeah, so then I start the problem solving. For Ron, when you ask him that question, he would rather not get on a project with holes that he can see. I mean, he knows they're going to be there, but he'd rather not. I know I'm going to have holes, but I also know that the answers to the biggest questions are going to get answered by getting the most talented director and the most talented stars or actors, because that collaboration really brings finished answers to really hard problems. In other words, in the case of Ransom, we had a lot of big problems on Ransom, but I was excited about getting going. Mel Gibson, who's the star of Ransom, becomes our collaborator and partner, as did Tom Hanks on Apollo 13. Those two stars independently on those two movies came up with lots of answers, asked lots of hard questions, and demanded more of the script and made the movies better.
In fact, I have a theory about movie stars now, that in fact, that the greatest stars of our era, I can't speak to the Hollywood system, the old Hollywood system, but of our era are the stars that are, in fact, are also good storytellers and that carry with them a kind of quality control. And in the case with both Mel and Hanks, Tom Cruise is another example. They don't try to direct the movie at all. They're not oppressive. They're willing to take no for an answer, but they ask great questions, smart questions, and the movies, they make the movies better. The way a great point guard will come in and turn the team around,
right.
They make their movies better.
Well said. Television. Whose idea was to get into television?
Me.
Now, you've done well, but I mean, didn't you have enough to do making movies?
That was my point. That was my point, exactly.
You have enough to do, Brian. Well, I got into it for a couple of reasons. One is I love television. I like the process of it, and when it works, it's really good. I started in television, but I never really felt like I succeeded on it. You know, I didn't succeed at it in the same terms that we have in movies, and I really want to creatively try to find a way to lick it. Yeah. And that's what we're trying to do right now.
I was, in fact, kind of dismayed by television. We had sold Parenthood as a television series, got a great commitment. I believed in it thoroughly. I had personally worked really hard on it, and I was frustrated with the way it was treated by the network and so forth and so on. And I really had kind of said, well, you know what, maybe someday, but not now. We talked about getting back into it, and I was always discouraging from that point forward. And, you know, I love TV as a medium, and I think it's wildly creative and a more creative arena than ever before, but I had such a bitter taste in my mouth, but Brian, you know, pushed the deal through, and
so you set about finding the right people to do it, I assume. I mean,
yes. Well, first what I did is I made a joint venture arrangement with Disney, with Joe Roth and Michael Eisner. Went and did that. Well, we did that.
No, partnering is the biggest new idea I hear in business today, and especially because we do all these high tech people.
Right. Yes.
I mean, and people whose market capitalization is in, you know, is 25 and 50 and $100 billion.
Yeah.
They talk partnership. That's what they talk. I mean, the new word that I hear more than anything else is partnering, which is like you doing the same thing with your independent production company. We're going to partner with Disney and do this, and we'll go in and we'll figure out how together we can do this, and then if we make some money, we'll split some money.
Yes, exactly. And you know, since we're essentially storytellers, and what they are is they're helpers of storytellers, but they have two networks. They have a lot of things that we need. That you know, another overused word is synergy. I mean, they really do have creative synergy that matches with us. So we went and made this television joint venture with them, and Michael Eisner reminded me. He said, "Yo, you're just a TV guy. You're not a movie guy." Because I used to work for him in television. I started in television. Yeah. So, and then I found a man named Tony Krantz, who was a TV packaging agent at CAA. He'd been there 13 years. And we brought him in after we had this deal at Disney, and we now have this wonderful sort of chemistry working together. And we basically do it a little differently than other people. What we do now is we told Eisner and Joe Roth that basically the idea will always be the employer. We will not do the big bank deals. We're not going to do the $20 million deals and put some writer-producer in an office and hope that he has an idea. We're gonna chase great ideas and let the idea be the umbrella of all of the employment. And that works a couple of ways. That way you're not giving away creativity to people. You're sharing in creativity. And it's a lot less expensive. Because if the idea is driving it, you're not sort of held hostage to someone with this $20 million deal and you're trying to write that off.
Plus you're making shows with people who are inspired and highly motivated, not just obliged.
You two watch what's happening at DreamWorks and think what?
Ron, you can take that.
I think it's hard to build a studio. I think it's hard to you know, snap your fingers and be a fully integrated entertainment company. We
actually hope that they
succeed.
That they pull it off.
Yeah.
I mean, look, they're three enormously talented. I mean, talented winners. And
Steven Spielberg,
Jeff Katzenberg, and David Geffen. My God! So they'll get it.
I think they'll do it too.
They'll pull it off.
They'll do it,
and it's a good thing if they do.
But if what you're getting at was, do I think we ought to be DreamWorks?
That was the follow-up question.
I read your mind. I don't feel.
I mean, you've got two of the elements. I mean, here, you know. Well, you could make the case. I mean, lots of differences. You're Steven Spielberg, and you're Jeffrey Katzen. You're Jeffrey, you know, in a sense, even though you play a different kind of role. But you could make the case that two of those elements are here, you know, and David does something else. I mean, he's kind of a wise man that's there.
Right.
They're a great team.
I think that we found raising big bulks of money, doing that part of it, managing that is creatively toxifying. It's very, very distracting. Toxifying. Yeah. Yeah, that it's a creative.
You got to be a
pollutant.
businessman.
Yeah, exactly.
You got to be a businessman first, then, if you're going to be responsible for that volume of money up
And you
front.
guys are businessmen. You
Well, we
really
are.
I mean, you can't do it the way you've done it
We have to be
without
smart
having an
about
eye
business.
on the bottom line, an eye on expenses, an eye on,
Yes.
you know, making products that people want
Correct.
to buy.
That's correct.
Yes.
Well, we are fiscally responsible.
But
and
we
have
start
a
with
real
the ideas.
Right.
Yeah, we start with an idea, and then we try to match that up to. We try to get the right creative ingredients to go with that idea, the director and star. Then we try to match that up with an amount of money that should be spent on that is fiscally responsible, so it matches with the vision and everything else. But managing $2 billion would involve taking on a business partner. That involves abdicating power and trust to some equal person. And that just isn't our nature right now. Now, if Charlie, you want to join.
No, but there's one last question before I leave this.
Yes.
The idea of running Universal had what appeal?
What appeal would it have?
Yeah.
It would have some appeal, but that's also...
I mean, you're the 800-pound elephant there as it is.
I don't know. What do you think, Ron?
Well, they haven't asked me, and I wouldn't want. And I wouldn't want the
if
job.
you listen carefully, there is something in what he just said. They haven't asked me.
Well, they didn't ask me either.
They didn't?
No.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay.
It's look, our company may evolve in ways in which, you know, we may wind up having some real interesting choices to make, and if it evolves organically. And we look at each other and say, and Brian says, I would like to manage a slate of 12 movies.
And we can fold in our television and really make it.
And we can make it all work. And I say, I'd like to help on more movies and be on the board of something like that and be exclusive to this company and be a director and a producer and try to be a little more productive or whatever. Then that's a conversation that could happen, that we could have, that could evolve out of what we've built already. At the moment, things are going just great. We get to creatively pay attention to the projects we're working on, not hand over the controls completely, collaborate in ways that are not arm's length, but are pretty immediate and exciting and interesting. And I think it's what we always sort of dreamed it would be. We're still ambitious guys interested in all sorts of prospects. So who knows?
Warren Beatty said to me in a piece that I did for 60 Minutes too, he said, you know, we were having this conversation on top of a roof at his house that was damaged by the earthquake, and we were just talking about movies, and he said, you know, it's such a pleasure to be able to make movies.
Yeah.
It really is.
You know?
It's a joy.
It really is the opportunity to create in which is the most influential, one of the more influential cultural mediums of any time.
Yes.
Isn't it amazing?
It is
Opportunity.
amazing. I mean,
as you
we
think
can't-
about going, do this, and we can make all this money, but to take two storytellers, you know, who built a record so that you can choose projects that appeal to you,
Right.
because you have bankability. You know, you can choose people that you want to work with because you have a track record. That's an amazing place to be.
We are very fortunate.
you. We are
Couple of
very
lucky
fortunate.
Cowboys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Pleasure
you
to have
very
you.
much.
Thank
A lot of
you.
fun.
That was great.
Enjoy it.
Thanks so
Great fun.
much.
Great to see you.
As always, great to see you.
Good to see you. Now, I've always wanted to ask you this. How long has the hair been?
About 5 years.
Yeah.
What happened
There was no
is-
Don King moment, was there?
No, there was no Don King moment.
It's such a slow evolution that I barely noticed that it was rising myself.
He doesn't notice these things.
We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Oh, that was on.
I was on the air.